as I often do, at my own risk sometimes, right? But, I was just thinking about, all of the ways that we are separated, these divisions, and this has been on my mind a lot lately because it seems like people look for more excuses to misunderstand than they do to understand. And I'm thinking, well, if we're going to have a new world and things are going to get better, why we need to probably figure out how to kind of erase all those barriers to communication and misunderstanding. And I was thinking, what is the problem? And a lot of times it does come from these organizations, starting not just government, but I mean church and schools, and there's just so many different belief systems, different parties, different religions, different cultures. There's so many different ones, and you would think that America would have some of this figured out already, especially by now, right? Because there's so many different, schools of thought here in our country. And I was just thinking about that, how and this, I noticed, that anytime anything big happens, it's a minority that gets blamed for it, and that's weird to me, right? Something's wrong with that. Did you know? And I did this search a long time ago, and it was, I'm not sure what brought up the idea to do the search, but did you know that white collar crime is more prevalent than petty theft? It usually is coming from and white collar, it doesn't mean color. It just means the rich people are more likely to commit crime than the average person. I mean, you can search it yourself. I looked for it, right? So every time a government or somebody, blames it on a certain group, it really kind of concerns me. It's like, I mean, how many times do you want to go along with that before we start asking questions? Because, it seems to me that maybe we done it, maybe the Caucasians did it. I don't know. Just a thought. I mean, I don't want to step on my fellow Caucasians' feet, but, it's just, come on. Sometimes you start figuring these things out, and believe me, I don't want to give anybody any ideas or get you upset, but I did a search. Yes, I did. Another one on stereotypes. What do women of other cultures think about white women? Hold on. Okay, I'm back. Okay, here it is. And it was really disappointing. And I'm sure that we've all grown, that this is not always true. These are stereotypes. These are just like off the cuff thinking, right? So hopefully they're not exactly true. I would like to believe that. Okay, so, oh no, I lost my spot. Wait, okay, here we go. Did I lose it? I lost my search. I haven't forgotten. Women, Caucasian women, they think that we are greedy, privileged, arrogant, uppity, which is kind of arrogant, and maybe entitled, but on the swing side of that, the Latinas, they're spicy and fun and beautiful, right? I mean, each group has their flair. and but it's funny, there's different cultural behaviors and so many things that divide us, and I'm just wondering, is there any way to bridge that gap? I would like to believe that there's a way to bridge that gap. I don't want to be perceived the way that I think that they perceive us, and I think that we could do a better job of being better Christians and being better, everybody within each of our own cultures, and what is it going to take for us to really just to try to, I mean, maybe I'm just pie in the sky. Maybe it's just idealistic, right? But I know that we should stop worrying about political party. If there was one thing that I think that we should change, would be to get off the party bandwagon. because the Republican Democrat thing has kept us apart on purpose for a really long time. And it would be really cool, more than cool, it would like probably save our country and the planet, if we would just get on the same page politically and try to think of our larger, you know, humanity perspective versus, just being divided so completely, over these political issues. Now, I mean, I think that there's got to be some way that we can come into agreement, I truly, where, we can have our ideas, and make money and be, make wealth in this country, without socialism coming in and skimming off the top and taking our ideas and our money away. We don't want that either. So we've got to come up with a way to, figure it out, to where people that, so that everybody is remembered and is considered in these decisions. And so I guess I never really know for sure what's going to come up and out of me. I say a prayer and I think, there's too many reasons. It seems like people would rather fight than actually get along. And I was talking the other day, we all have our skills and talents. You don't really have time to be wasting on bullying somebody. It's pointless, okay? Because we all have flaws. There's, and it would be so much easier for all of us to just think of all the things that we have in common instead of the things that we don't have in common. And this wealth poverty thing too, it's just as bad as Republican and Democrat. You poor person down there, you are just not good enough for me. Because they're just, I mean, there is that attitude that, people that don't have a lot of money are simply not respected. And, it's just, and you might think that there's good reasons for it, but, you never know what somebody's going through. You really don't. And just the time that it would take to judge somebody. Well, she's the maid, so we don't really talk to her because she's like the maid. Oh well. Maybe we can just grace her with a visit over, we can, donate to her cause. But I just feel like we're dehumanizing each other, not just in our country, but the world is kind of dehumanizing because we all have these different perspectives, and we're not looking at our common denominators, like family, kids, schooling, just, religion, because really basically, if you really think about it, we actually do have some things in common that we could focus on. But I think what it really boils down to is respecting those differences. It's respecting it. And now respect, I learned a lot about respect. I admire people, and I had been for most of my life giving my respect and admiration to those people that probably, well, they didn't do anything to earn it. And that was where I was going wrong. I was respecting these people because of their stations in life. And I believe I talked about this a while back. How we esteem people in these higher positions, and we think that they're basically God, that they're deciding, maybe they decide laws for us, maybe they, have this position where we really admire it, and we think highly of them. And it isn't that we shouldn't. We should definitely respect the effort that it took for them to get there. I really believe that. However, we seem to think that they don't have flaws, and that's where the problems come. These people in these positions that we deem to be over us, when we think of them as not, and they think of us back as in this kind of circumstance, and sometimes it is what it is. I mean, maybe they have a power position and you're down here and you have to respect the position of that person. But when you think about the person as a human and you're down here, you kind of need to kind of like this. They need to have, I mean, we all need to understand the human condition. And to realize that even if somebody has that position, they can still commit crime. They can still hurt you. They can do good things too. Okay? And also on the other hand of that, poor people, they can do mean things, but it's just, You see my point. So they're still human beings. We still make mistakes, all right? And so when I look at somebody, I respect them, and I was respecting them without really allowing them to prove to me, well, some of them kind of did. I mean, some people, I looked at their work and I saw what they've done, and, so I automatically gave them respect because, maybe I had, you know, enjoyed the benefits of their education, along the way. But when it comes right down to it, we don't really know who people are exactly as a person. We just don't know. And so we still have to be careful. And I think that's what I was doing. I was looking at people's positions and giving them that esteem and respect and appreciating where they were at in life. And those are good things. I mean, I think that's worthwhile. But when it comes personally, there's no matter what your station, just as a human being and as somebody that, as long as you're not hurting anybody, and you're just coming in there, you have a personal power. There's never going to be a time, no matter what your station, that you shouldn't expect to be treated well. You can't control the other person, but you can also decide what you personally want to put up with. But but it's so easy for us to lose our self-esteem or to feel like we're less than somebody because that's what they want us to feel like, when we know that's just not true. That we are a vital, loving person, hopefully, And I think that's my point. And it's just, there's too many things, like, even, in relationships, there's just so many things that divide us instead of bring us together. And, and so I challenge myself every day. I mean, I don't just talk to one culture and forget the rest. I try to interact with anybody because I see people as just people. In my mind, I really am colorblind. I just want to learn from people and who they are and how they present. If they have good material, I'm going to listen. I don't care about that. It doesn't really matter to me. And that's the point, is that, and also, but we owe it to ourselves also to be the kind of person that is respectable. Okay. We need to do and say and be things that are respectable. Especially if you're in a position where you have fans or people looking up to you that respect you. I can't imagine being in that position and not loving the people that follow me. Of course, those fans, those people that follow you, that's your bread and butter. Those people that love you and respect you and esteem you, and you probably worked for that. You certainly don't want to disrespect your fans. You certainly do not want to disrespect those that really think highly of you, because you never know when something's going to happen and all of a sudden that person that you looked at and snubbed like they were nothing turns out to be that you were wrong, because everybody's somebody. Okay? Maybe not everybody knows that there's somebody yet, but you never know when they figure that out or what they have to offer. And that is the point, right? Is to keep in mind that we can come up with so many differences, but and this world is changing all the time. There's some really, I was thinking, I know this sounds bad, okay? And believe me, I'm not being judgmental, but back in the day when we were growing up, it was all, for me as a little girl, it was all about princesses. And it still is. They did the princess thing, when the Prince Charming thing, and he comes over and, oh, they fall in love and he saves her. She's usually poor and he's usually rich, and he comes in and he just saves her, and then they go off and live happily ever after. And so when I was little, I learned every single song to Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella. And I remembered being in the 3rd grade and going to school and singing the songs. We had to do like a little talent show thing. And so I was singing one of the songs, that Leslie Ann Warren was singing from Cinderella, and just think, because every little girl wanted her Prince Charming. And really, in a real way, when you're raised to believe those things and you watch those stories, you grow up and you think, okay, well, Prince Charming's going to come along. But the real world, okay, and then it's a brutal slap in the face that it really isn't like that. And that, you have to really bust your butt and make it. And that this Prince Charming guy doesn't really exist, and now, and if he did, he'd be coming over from a neighboring, kingdom to go kiss the prince. He wouldn't be coming to kiss Cinderella anymore. He's coming to kiss, you know what I mean? So it's just like, do they have any Walt Disney movies about the princess coming over to save the prince and falling in love and living happily ever after? Our cultures have changed so much, and it's just like, I still want Prince Charming. I still have the men program. I mean, I am, all about Prince Charming. Yeah, I am. But they're so hard to find. And that's really too bad, because I think Prince Charming is so confused. He doesn't even know, really. I think we're in a world where, there's so many cultural differences, and things are changing so much. It's hard to know where you stand as a woman or as a man or somewhere in between. It's just like, it's a world of confusion. And it's really sad in some ways, because, it keeps you looking and searching, because you can't fill that need that's inside yourself that maybe would resolve itself all by itself if people are willing to actually get on their knees. Really get on your knees and say a prayer. It goes something like this. Dear Heavenly Father, I'm so lost, and I don't know what to do. I have these feelings inside, and I want to fix it. I know that I've got a problem, or so-and-so has a problem with me, and I don't know what to do. But I do know this. I know that I'm not going to let that person, hurt or abuse me. I'm going to protect myself. I'm not going to sacrifice myself to be abused by somebody. That's not what I know you want for me, Lord. What would you have me do? What is it that I can do? Well, at the end of the day, I realize when I'm done, I'm just like, just go be yourself, Treva, because that's really all you can do. All you can do is stand here and say how you feel. I try really hard. It's not like I'm perfect. I have my prejudice about certain things that I just don't understand. And I think that's what it is. I think sometimes we have these prejudiced feelings, even within our own races, based on things that we just simply don't understand. And I think it's a matter of taking the time to listen to each other and to try to figure those things out. We don't have to agree with it, but we would probably be happier, or at least it'd be more at peace with each other if we came in to an agreement with ourselves and with God, that we can set an example, we can be of assistance, but we have to accept that we cannot make a person be something that they're not. We cannot make a person do what we want all the time. We might be able to give them a sales pitch, tell them what we've experienced, and those things are good. But each person really does have not only an obligation, but you have a privilege of finding out who you are and make it like this amazing journey of you. Because there's nobody like you in the world, right? There's nobody like you. And there's a lot of things that I need to improve upon when it comes to looking at different groups and cultures myself, because I don't understand, and that's a problem. It isn't, and so I'm suggesting that instead of just automatically making a judgment against somebody, that you take a time to seek and understand why that person is the way that they are. What made them like that? Now, and it's, and this is within normal realms of behavior, right? We're not talking about when it gets to where, there's violence and there's, and there's a lot of social violence too. When it goes that far, then there's no more communicating. Everything's shut down. There's no way to even want to have a conversation. And believe me, social violence is targeting and sex trafficking, bullying, blocking, stealing, any kind of crime like that is social violence, and it is a crime. And when things get escalated to that point, there is no longer any room for conversation or understanding. Not that you can't step back and let, and try to, you know, if nobody tells you where they're coming from, which doesn't necessarily give them any clout to go do off and do what they're doing just because they don't like it and they don't feel good about it. Too bad. Sometimes, you just have to say, well, I know I'm feeling this way. I need to go deal with myself. It really isn't that person's fault. This is my problem. Okay? And that's maturity, when you realize that, you can't just behave in this manner because somebody makes you personally feel uncomfortable. Scroll past them. Don't watch them. Move on. You don't have to linger and give them a hard time. And if you've got a problem or they're peculiar, you might want to admit that you actually like them. And maybe they've got something important to say to help you really work out or work through, the differences or what it is that's bothering you about that person. And again, don't waste your time. If you don't like it, move on. Really, seriously, it's that easy. You don't have to stay and do anything negative. It's just like, what was it? Thumper's mom said to him, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say nothing at all. And that's it. Really. It's fair equality. We're trying to all navigate here in this world of so many differences, and we're never going to be the same. Never. But I have just as much as right to exist as anybody else does. And boy, then there's people out there, clearly, that are counting on them bullying you so that you do not exist because they want to take it over. Why? Why do they target people? I wonder. When they could just really, they don't like it, move on. It's easy. Yeah. But we need to figure out a way to look at each other's differences and embrace them and try to understand them. If we can't embrace it, at least take the time to understand it if you care to understand. If you don't, move along. It's really simple, But the main thing that I've noticed when it comes to situations and people that I don't really understand, and I'm not in a situation where I can glean that understanding from them, the best I can do is think, okay, this is a person, and I have respect for myself enough to respect them. It's almost like the namaste, right? I appreciate the God in me that appreciates the God in you. And that is the point, right? Is to be able to accept our differences no matter what they are. Not accept them as far as, it may not be our lifestyle, but to have the respect to allow a person to be themselves, whether you agree or you don't agree. Actually, it's really, if somebody's doing something different than you that you do not understand, truly it's not your business. It isn't. It's not your business. Right. Now I love the Lord. I pray. I really do. I mean, it's not like it's a religion or even like I'm this like, there's Bible pushers and Bible peddlers, right? And that's great. But that isn't really how I feel about myself. It's just that I've been through so much that praying and having that relationship with God is just a natural way to be. Because I know I can't go from point A to point B without him. I mean, I could, but I don't feel as safe. I don't feel the warm fuzzy that I need, especially if I get this feeling that something's a little off. I'll say a little prayer, just think, God, be with me as I go do this thing. If you're going to get on stage and perform, dear Lord, please be with me. Help me do a great job. Dear Lord, please help me find a way to make things all work out. Dear Lord, what would you have me do in this particular situation? It's the willingness to realize that everybody needs a power greater than themselves. You do. And even if it is you talking to you, however you want to believe that, I believe in a God in heaven and my Savior, Jesus Christ. I believe that. So I talk to him, and it's never let me down. Never. I mean, I still have to go through struggles, but whenever I don't know what to do, where else do you go to find peace, really? I mean, you can use drugs and all that. And sometimes, like I said, I know what it feels like to be in so much pain. You want the pain to go away. But I do know also that I have made it pretty far, getting on my knees, even in the worst times, and just asking questions. What would you have me do? Here I am. What am I supposed to say right now? How can I make a difference in some way to bridge the gap? Because I don't know how else to do that. I can't make somebody that's up here that has that mindset that they're better than everybody else think of me or esteem me as anything if they don't want to. That is their problem. It is not my problem. They're wrong. I know they're wrong. Of course they're wrong. It's arrogance to think that you're up here and that your life and your position is more important than somebody else's good name, right? You just don't know what you're doing. You don't know what trouble you can get in. And it seems, again, it just seems like people that get too uppity, too arrogant in their positions, and they forget that, there's a time when maybe they were in that position where somebody was above them and they felt like they were, underneath somebody else's rule. And everybody has a boss, everybody has a boss. And so it's really important to remember that you don't know who you are slandering. You don't know who you're kicking around. You just don't know. And vice versa. You don't know whose life you're blessing by being a blessing and by choosing to be a positive force in somebody's life, to be a positive force and positive energy in your circle of influence, whoever sees you, that you've added some light, love, and hope to those that have been kicked around a little bit too much. And also a little humbling for those that have been up here and they're not considering that, you never know. You never know when your subordinate could end up being your boss. You want to be good to everybody. You really do. You really do. Because your position and your station is never guaranteed. Never. You might think it is. Oh, because I'm this, I'm that. And the minute that you make a foul decision in your life, all of a sudden you could go from riches to rags in a split second, right? So we can't get too comfortable. There's still a place of humility to where we have to realize that we are human and that we make mistakes. But when we recognize that we're making a mistake, that we need to correct it pretty quick. And sometimes if it goes too far, there's another way you have to correct it. But in the meantime, it is to consider yourself below someone is really just as harmful as thinking of somebody way up there, because you have to realize you are a human being and nobody has the right to browbeat and bully you. They just don't, right? You have the God-given right, just the fact that you exist and breathe. If you have a thought and you have something to say, you can say it. You have value. There's a gift or something you've got that we need, or you wouldn't be here. And I genuinely believe that. And no matter what your position, you have to keep that ego in check because you just never know when it comes all falling down. It's really important to remember that. I know it is. I know it is. I thank God for giving me the wisdom, and even if it took me having to just get on my knees every day just to find out how to get from one day to the next, to figure out how I was going to buy groceries for 4 kids and get through that. To work 2 jobs and try to support my children and raise them. If I had to pray every day and that kept me close to God and it helped me develop a personal relationship with Him, just knowing without and I've always known, without a shadow of a doubt, that we are nothing without that power that's greater than ourselves. Even on our worst day, if you ask Him, He will be there. He will. You might not always feel like He's there, but just the act of asking, realizing your limitations, that you don't have everything figured out, and everyone has limitations, and just the action that you take toward accepting that, and that there is a God that is greater than you, and you can talk to Him and he is going to help you discern the best way or the best approach to navigate any situation whatsoever. None of us are perfect, but I know that if we come out the gate knowing that we're going to ask him, what do I do now? And we're not perfect. Sometimes we fly off the handle. Sometimes we don't do things the way that he wants us to do them. But we have our free agency, and we do have repentance. It's just when we go too far and we never learn, and we just repeat the same mistakes over and over again. We never learn. Sooner or later shit happens, and then we're a lost cause. Well, not really a lost cause, but we just have to hike our way back up that hill. And sometimes it gets really steep if we don't remember. I mean, I have nothing else to say. This is what was on my heart for today. I hope it helped. Find a way to bridge that gap, cultural gaps, differences, things that we don't understand, personality differences. Because I know it matters. If it didn't matter, I don't think he would have me say it, because I really do pray before I say anything. And I don't really prepare that much. It just kind of comes out. This is what I'm thinking. This is what I was looking at. It wasn't, when I looked at the cultural differences, what women of other culture thinks about, and it's probably the same for men, what women of different cultures think about Caucasian women is it's not cool. I don't even want to read it. It's pretty bad, and I think, okay, well, it is stereotypes. But, and it probably is because we don't have that bridge to communicate that gap between us. But you know what we can do that bridges that gap? It's just kindness and mutual respect. If you're not showing kindness and mutual respect for a person, no matter all of the other differences, life, it's just not going to be good for you. It's not going to be helpful. You're not going to be able to navigate life in a peaceful, loving, and happy way. There's always going to be some kind of conflict going on in your life, because your nose is up in the air and you're not considering that as a person of flesh and bone, blood and beating heart, and with children and a family, and so I just common sense stuff that sometimes it takes to hear it to really understand that it's going to take that kind of thinking to get us through these massive changes that are coming, and for us to really have a unified existence. We're going to have to find out, pay more attention to our common denominators than our differences. And that is the point. Thanks for listening. You guys have a great night. Bye.